to the 5-Pack, where we talk about the 5 things that matter, 5 things that will matter, and a daily pack rip. Here is your host, Kyle Elfrink.
Okay, we're back at it on a Thursday. Welcome into the 5-Pack. Kyle Elfrink with you here on the Better Sports Network. A fun Wednesday that we will recap, and we'll also get you set for a fun Thursday and beyond here on the 5-Pack. Now, I say pack. What does that mean? We got a pack to open, and we'll do that at the end of the show. Today, we will be finishing off our 1989 Donruss Pack Rack. Originally, this was hanging with 3 sets of cards. You got one more pack to get to. And you can see, I've mentioned this before, when you had a rack pack in the late 80s or early 90s, you could always cheat by figuring out one of the cards. Now, you can only get one because on the back, Donruss was on to a sneaky baseball collectors. They stuck the puzzle card on the back. So you only knew the top card. Today's top card's a pretty good one. Look who it is. Sweet music himself, Frank Viola. Yes, Frankie V of the Minnesota Twins was a big part of that, what was that, 87 World Series title. I think he was still there maybe in 91 against the Braves. I can tell you, though, this. I was looking at this right before the show. I don't know if you can see it. See that upper corner? It's already dented. It's already creased. My PSA 10 of Frank Viola is all of a sudden like a PSA 6, just like that. You know, that's what'll happen when it's literally been sitting in here for 34 years since 1989. So we'll get to that at the tail end of our 5-Pack. We do it each and every day. We have a little fun here at the end of the show. Okay, what do we have for you today? Well, we got the 5 things that matter right at this very moment. We got 5 things that will matter. And of course, we've got our pack rip. Let us get rolling by starting with 5 things that do indeed matter. And if you caught yesterday's show, we told you, man. We told you. Hopefully you listened to us. What did I say about those odds for the Miami Heat? They were plus 400 to win the series against the Boston Celtics. Let me say that again. 24 hours ago, the Miami Heat were plus 400 to take the series against Boston. Now, at this very moment, guess what Miami is? They're plus 170. You missed your window if you were thinking about taking the Miami Heat. Why the change? Well, the change happened because of what happened in Game 1 last night. Miami goes up to Boston, and just like they've done to other teams, Milwaukee, the Knicks, whomever, the Miami Heat go on the road, and they get a huge win. And as you might expect, it was all thanks to Jimmy Butler.
Shot clock at 5. Butler on the wing. Goes into Pritchard. Puts up the mid-ranger, and it's pure. Inside, Butler collides, Brogdon, foul, counting.
8 of 19 from 3 for the Celtics.
Double-double, Smart. Butler, bam, with a twirling shot. Tip in, down, count it. What a play by Butler. It's Brogdon. Smart, hold on for Williams, and a nice knock away by the leaping Butler. Adebayo, galloping, bumping, driving, and the score. Undrafted, he's in there right now, setting a screen, switch on defense. Butler is tailed by White, doubled, and he still hits.
They just ran a floppy action.
Butler got the ball, Horford will pick up the D. Martin off the baseline. Butler launching a 3, bullseye! Jimmy Butler scuffling his way into the paint over White. What a shot!
The dude making shots from everywhere on the court. Jimmy Butler and the Heat, they pick up the Game 1 victory, 123 to 116. Butler's been doing this the whole playoffs. If you haven't been following, guy's been pretty well unstoppable. Last night, 35 points. He had 5 rebounds, 7 assists. He also threw in, just for good measure, 6 steals. He was the leader, but give credit to the other guys. Look at the depth of scoring that the Heat had last night. They had nobody else over 20 points. Again, Butler had 35, and nobody else was over 20. Bam Adebayo got to 20. they had a total of 5 players, including Adebayo, that were between 15 and 20 points. So they were coming at the Celtics from all angles. Another thing to keep in mind, like you watch those highlights courtesy of TNT, and you think to yourself, wow, Miami looked good the whole game. They didn't. They were trailing in the first half by as many as 13 points. They were trailing at the halftime buzzer by 9 points. Early in the third quarter, they were trailing on the road by 12 points. And then they went ballistic. They went nuclear in the third quarter. Final point total in the third quarter for the Miami Heat was 46. 46 points in a single quarter. Now, the Miami Heat have been playing basketball for like 35 years, I think? Somewhere around there. They've been in the playoffs fairly regularly the last 20 years or so. That third quarter last night against the Celtics was the best playoff quarter they've ever had. 46 points. And they go on for the victory. Game 2 is going to be on Friday night. TNT will have it again. 8:30 is the tip-off on Friday night. Yesterday, Boston was favored by 5.5 for Game 1. They are doubling down in Vegas. They've got the Celtics coming back to secure a victory tonight. Celtics currently favored by 8.5. And I mentioned those series odds. Remember, yesterday, Miami was plus 400. They're now plus 170. I've said this once. I've said this twice. I've said it a million times. It's not about being right with wagering. It's about being timely with wagering. You missed your chance on the Heat at plus 400 yesterday. Let's go to our second sports item that matters today. We go to the world of baseball, where last night was just an exciting night. There were good games in baseball in the afternoon, in the late afternoon, certainly in the evening. I mean, we had a good day of baseball. I am going to spotlight 3 walk-off victories that we had on Wednesday night. We start at Citi Field, where the Mets came back for a huge win against Tampa.
Alonso drives one, deep left field, really going back, it's out of here, and the Mets win it! Into the second deck, Alonso a 3-run shot, and the Mets walk it off for the first time this year.
SNY with the footage there. Pete Alonso with the home run. The Mets, who've had a really frustrating season, they came back from 3 different deficits in that game. They were down 2-0. They were down 5-2, and they were down 7-5. And in all 3 occasions, they got a big home run. The rookie who we told you about yesterday, Mark Vientos, he had a 2-run homer. Francisco Alvarez, rookie catcher, he had a 9th inning 2-out homer. And then, of course, Pete Alonso there with the game-winning homer. So a big, big win for the New York Mets. Like we've noted, it has not been an easy road this year. The offense has been less than average, I think it's fair to say. But last night, big moments. Vientos, Alvarez, and Alonso, all with those big home runs. We'll talk more about the Mets and the Rays coming up in just a bit. Let's move to our second walk-off of the night. This was also a big win, courtesy of the Toronto Blue Jays against the Yankees.
And a fly ball to deep left field, and Danny Jansen is sending it home. His second walk-off hit in
Danny Jansen, the hero, a scoreless game in the 10th inning, by the way. 3-run homer wins it. And that was critical for the Blue Jays because if they'd lost that game, that would have been 3 straight home losses to the Yankees. And that would have dropped the Blue Jays behind the Yankees in the AL East standings. Both these teams are trying to chase down the Tampa Bay Rays, of course. And, of course, Toronto with the win last night. The Rays losing to the Mets. They do gain a game. Right now, the Blue Jays 6.5 back. New York is 7.5 back. The fourth and final game in that series is tonight. Nestor Cortez going up against Jose Barrios. Should give a shout out to Chris Bassett of the Toronto Blue Jays. Mentioned the scoreless game in the 10th inning there at the Rogers Center. Chris Bassett had 7 shutout innings. His streak is now up to 27 consecutive shutout innings. And you might recall way back at the beginning of the season, Chris Bassett making his first start with the Blue Jays was absolutely obliterated by the St. Louis Cardinals. It was a horrendous start. It was something like 8 earned runs in an inning or something crazy. Since that point, Bassett in 8 starts has a 1.71 ERA. So probably one of the worst starts of the year. Came in his first start with the Blue Jays. Since then, pretty unhittable. Last night, 7 shutout innings. He's got the 3rd longest streak in Toronto Blue Jay history for consecutive innings without allowing a run. 27 again is that number. I think Dave Stieb is number 1 with 33 innings. Well, one good walk-off deserves a second, and a second good walk-off deserves a third. Let's go to Houston, where the Astros at one point in the 8th inning were trailing the Chicago Cubs 6-1. They eventually won it, though, 7-6.
Tucker, line drive, base hit. Tying run scores. Here comes Bregman. Here comes the throw. Bregman will be safe at home plate. Astros win it, 7-6.
Lose your minds, H-Town. That's a sweep of the Chicago Cubs.
4-run bottom half of the ninth. After a 2-run eighth, they came back from down 6-1. And
Cubs just look dumbfounded on that highlight, courtesy of AT&T Sportsnet down in Houston. Kyle Tucker with the big moment. They mentioned the sweep of the Cubs. Houston has now won 6 of 7. Now, we were talking about the struggles of the Mets. The Blue Jays kind of been hovering around 500 all season. Houston also got off to a fairly slow start this year, but by winning 6 of their last 7, they're now 24-19. They're only 2 games back of the Texas Rangers. No game today for the Astros, but they've got a double dose of good news. They had the good news last night, and then 2 more pieces of good news. A, Oakland is coming to town. First of 3 will be on Friday night. And for that game, for that Friday night game, there's a chance that we could see Jose Altuve activated for that game. So missed the entire season with that broken thumb, I think it was. Injured that in the World Baseball Classic. Yet to play a single game. Could be back tomorrow for the Houston Astros. Let's go to our third sports matter that matters. Just talking about Altuve's injury. Let's talk about another couple of injuries. Unfortunate injuries. It is one thing to be exciting, to be young, to throw hard, to be in the majors, to have success. But all of that can be whisked away with an injury. And unfortunately, yesterday we got injury news in Cincinnati and in Los Angeles. Nick Lodolo of the Reds and Dustin May of the LA Dodgers, both of those players placed on the IL, and they're going to be on the IL for quite some time. Dustin May got the start yesterday against Sonny Gray. We were previewing that matchup here on the 5-pack. Dustin May lasted 1 inning. His velocity was down. He left after 1 inning of pitching. Prognosis is a flexor pronator sprain in his right elbow. It's a hurt elbow. He is going to get a PRP injection. If that injection takes, he's going to miss over a month still. If the injection does not take, he could have to have season-ending surgery. Now, it was only 14 or 15 starts ago that Dustin May came back from Tommy John surgery. He's still a really young guy, but that would be 2 very big arm injuries, almost back-to-back. Now, as for Nick Lodolo of the Reds, he's been out for like a week with what the Reds were terming a calf injury. Well, that has now changed. It's not a calf injury for Nick Lodolo. In fact, what we have is a stress reaction in his left tibia. I don't know about you, but every time I hear like broken tibia, like it makes me squeamish. That's one of those things that will cause me to send a surge up my neck. Ooh, tibia. I don't even know why. It's nothing disgusting. It's just weird to me. Anyway, he's looking at like 3 months for Nick Lodolo. So you look at both these guys, oh, it's so cool to be young and exciting and to throw hard and you're going to have such a great career. You hope, but these are two big injuries. And for the Dodgers, the pitching staff's starting to take some hits. For the Reds, I mean, this was not a year to compete anyway, but Nick Lodolo alongside Hunter Green was a part of the future. I mean, they were talking just a week ago. They gave a long-term contract to Hunter Green. They brought out his pre-arbitration years. They were looking to do the same thing with Lodolo. They still may do that. This is an injury that doesn't appear to be something that would be reoccurring, but it's going to be a long one for Lodolo. So we'll see what happens there. But both those guys, big question marks, I think, for the rest of the season. Moving to item number 4 of what matters today on the 5-pack. How about a little college football? No, you have not entered the twilight zone, and you're saying, wait a second, is it September? It's not September. It's the middle of May. But college football is on my mind. College football should be on your mind. We start with the ACC, the Atlantic Coastal Conference. Why are we starting there? Well, if you've followed this sport at all in recent years, you know that what you used to know, the SEC, the ACC, the Big East, the Big 12, the Pac-10, Big 10, like that's all gone. Like the sport has had a monumental change in its landscape over the last 15 years. The SEC is bigger, the Big 12 smaller, the Pac-10 is now the Pac-12. The Big 10 has like 14 teams in it. And the ACC has kind of been caught in the background. This is for those not familiar, this is Clemson, this is Florida State, this is Miami, Boston College, Duke, North Carolina. That's the ACC. Well, they now have rumblings occurring about maybe some of their member organizations bolting from the ACC. And as usual, this sucker comes down to money. That's the problem. Money. Spring meetings taking place down in Florida. The ACC commissioner is Jim Phillips. Now, you've got all these rumors and teams that maybe want to leave the ACC. And when that happens, it usually happens pretty quickly. Like rumors come out and boom, teams are gone. I mean, look no further than Oklahoma and Texas last year. Like rumors came out like 2 days later, they're adios. They're out of the Big 12. They're going to the SEC. I don't think that's going to happen with the ACC, but all of this comes down to money. And quite simply, it is this. The ACC has a bad TV contract. And the reason it's a bad TV contract is about 5 years ago, they inked a deal with ESPN. And that deal was a very long-term deal. I mean, right now, that deal is going to run through like 2036. We got 13 years left on the ACC ESPN media deal. It's great to know we have guaranteed money for the next 13 years, but you miss the market. You miss the ever-evolving TV market. You'd probably rather have a 6-year deal, and then 6 years from now, boom, look how much more money we're making. That's the plan, at least. So there's safety with the long-term aspect of the deal with the ACC and ESPN, but there's danger because you might be shortchanging yourself. Jim Phillips, the commissioner, talking yesterday about the revenue that the conference is pulling in.
50-50 partners on our network. And so they're motivated, we're motivated, and we've come together to have some discussions about what would be the next iteration for the ACC. Doesn't mean we're going to make a move, doesn't mean we're not going to make a move, but all options are on the table. Revenue is certainly one piece, and a really big piece as we move forward. But I will say it again, we need all communities healthy. And I mean, when you think about where we're at right now, we're probably in the gated community as one of 5. Maybe people will have a different line of demarcation about who's in there. It really doesn't take away from, we're going to continue to try to find new ways to generate revenue for our conference.
You better continue to find new ways, because if you don't, Florida State, they'll head to the SEC. Clemson, they'll head to the SEC. North Carolina, they'll head to the SEC. And you might be wondering to yourself, wait, the SEC is going to be like 20 teams. Yeah, it is. And like all 20 teams are going to be in the top 40 of college football. I mean, the problem with the ACC, okay, you got this long-term deal. Most of their schools are actually basketball schools. I mean, that's like a Duke, a North Carolina, Maryland's now in the Big Ten. I can't throw them, but like a Boston College, a Wake Forest. I mean, even Georgia Tech, they're kind of more basketball schools, and that's not where the money is. You don't get your money. I mean, even Miami's a football school, but Miami's been a better basketball school for the last decade. So the money's in football, but the ACC is kind of considered a basketball league. So that is what they are fighting. When it comes down to it, here's probably your answer. If they're going to keep this sucker together, A, you somehow convince ESPN to renegotiate. Good luck with that. B, you say, okay, we'll keep the revenue we've got. We'll keep the TV plan we got with ESPN, but we will create an unequal way of sharing that revenue. In most leagues, it's like, wow, we got this giant TV cash. Got this big bag of TV cash. We'll divvy it out equally to every member organization. That's how most conferences do it. That's how the ACC currently does it. But one way to keep the Florida States and the Miamis and the North Carolinas, Virginia Techs, all of them coming back is you say, you know what? We will go unequal with our revenue sharing. And the more you win, the more success you have, the more money you get. That is one possible answer here. Probably the answer here if the ACC wants to stay together. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of legal stuff's going on. It's even a question mark of if these teams wanted to leave, could they? But as we've seen in recent years, I mean, USC, UCLA, they're in the Big Ten. Huh? What? Most of these teams can just get up and leave. They'll find a way. They'll pay a fine, but they'll get out of it if they've got a better offer on the other side of the fence. Our fifth item that matters today, also from the world of college football, but kind of a sidebar college football storyline. It is, though, again, something to do with money. If you are a video game player, and I can say even myself, that this particular video game used to be a big thing for about 4 or 5 years. When I was in college, this was a game to have. We got the news yesterday that EA Sports, who already said, hey, we're bringing back NCAA football for 2024. They haven't had it since 2014 on PlayStation. I mean, EA Sports has everything. FIFA, NFL, baseball, all this stuff, hockey, everywhere. They didn't have a college football game for almost a decade now. Why? Well, they couldn't use the players, and they couldn't find an agreement with college football on using emblems and, using the bowl games and all this stuff. Well, it was announced yesterday that EA Sports and the NCAA and about 120 schools have come to an agreement. And part of it's because of the NIL, the names, image, and likeness that we now allow in college football. But for those who have been waiting and hoping and hoping and hoping for EA college football to come back, it's going to be back next year, and we're going to have real players with real names and real uniforms, and we're going to have teams, all that good stuff. So there's another thing that we get out of NIL. Now, the players will opt in, and they'll all get a bit of money. That's at least the plan. We'll see. I mean, if you're a superstar player, do you say, you know what? I actually want more money. I want more money than the punter gets because I'm like a Heisman Trophy contender. So we'll see. We'll have to hammer out those agreements. One other slight speed bump here is I mentioned 120 schools have all agreed, yeah, we'll do this, whatever, and we'll pay our players. Notre Dame, of course, it's the Fighting Irish. They, as of now, are not among that crew. As of now. Because that's how the Irish do it. Notre Dame's always special. And for whatever reason, everybody's willing to play. I mean, if you don't have the Notre Dame player names, is the game not exciting? I don't know. Maybe it isn't. Maybe Notre Dame has that much power. I do not know. Those are the 5 things that matter today. Yeah, college football. How about that? Maybe we get some college football. Take a time out here. When we come back, we've got 5 things that will matter. One of those things is actually mattering right now because we got golf. We got a big golf tournament. We'll talk about the PGA Championship, little baseball, little hockey. It's all coming your way next on the 5-Pack right here on the Better Sports Network.
What an absolutely brilliant win for the Mets last night over the Tampa Bay Rays, knocking them off 8-7 in 10 innings. Why was it so impressive? Because the Mets have looked absolutely lifeless up until this point in time. Met fans have been clamoring for the youngsters to be called up from AAA. Finally, they called up Francisco Alvarez. Finally, they called up Brett Beatty. Yesterday, they called up Mark Vientos. It was the style and fashion in which the Mets come from behind and win this baseball game. The game-tying 2-run home run from Vientos in the 7th, the game-tying 3-run home run from Alvarez in the 9th, and then the walk-off 3-run home run by Pete Alonso, the polar bear, in the 10th inning, a walk-off blast. And I can't get blue like Pete Alonso did to the Citi Field faithful after the game, but that is a hell of a victory. What is the meaning of it? It could be one that turns this Mets season around, because up until this point in time, they're now 2 games under the 500 mark. They've looked completely and utterly lifeless. Pitching to a high team ERA. They've been injuries throughout the course of the starting rotation. The offense looking punchless, going 5 games without hitting a home run. This is 2023 Major League Baseball, and for a Buck Showalter-led team, haven't really played particularly smart, whether it be in the field or on the base paths. With all that being said, could this win and this victory last night over the Tampa Bay Rays be a turning point? Maybe. Only time will tell. But I will tell you this, that was exactly the type of victory that this Met team needed to maybe jumpstart and get them going. Check out the comments below for a special offer from our friends at Fantasy Alarm.
Welcome back to the 5-Pack. Next up, the 5 things that will matter. Here's Kyle Elfrink.
Thank you very much, Miss Heather Klein. Kyle Elfrink back with you on the 5-Pack. We're about 30 minutes away, coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern. We've got a big best ball fantasy football draft for you right here on the Better Sports Network. Andrew Cooper, Brett Flynn, they're going to get going at 1 o'clock Eastern, teaming up with the guys from Underdog Fantasy. Getting you set, yes, already getting you set for 2023 NFL best ball seasons. Got people from NBC, RotoWire, Sports Illustrated, all jumping on board. Do want to remind you that you can team up with Fantasy Alarm and Underdog Fantasy Sports. Right now, there is a deposit match up to $100. So you put in 50, they'll match you with another 50. You put in 75, you put it up to $100, and Underdog Fantasy will match that $100. All you need to do is go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog, fantasyalarm.com/underdog, and use the promo code FANTASYALARM, and that will get you the match. But anyway, stick around for some best ball drafting and analysis coming your way in just about a half hour. That will matter on this Thursday, and we start in Western New York State. What are we doing out in Western New York State? Got to talk about the PGA Championship, which has started up this morning. I was just looking at the leaderboard. A few golfers are already, through 10, 11, even 12 holes. So we have started the PGA Championship. It is taking place at Oak Hill Golf Course. Long holes. This is a big boy course. We've also got a high rough. They have not played a major championship at Oak Hill in quite some time. There was a course redesign about 4 or 5 years ago. This will be the first visit, and the course is expected to be pretty difficult. Now, it's crazy when you look at odds for golf. Like I said, the tournament's already underway. It's 12:30 out east, so they're in round 1. I was looking earlier today, and within mere moments, and this is hole by hole, the odds to win the tournament, the odds to finish in the top 10, the odds to finish, to make the cut, they change literally on every swing of the club. It's pretty wild. I was talking earlier about, the Miami Heat. Yesterday, they're plus 400 to win the Eastern Conference Finals. Today, they're plus 170. Pretty dramatic. We see that in golf, too. I was looking at one point about an hour and a half ago, Scotty Scheffler was plus 800 to win. Right now, at this very moment, this is over at DraftKings, Scotty Scheffler is plus 450 to win. Now, what has he done? He's played 8 holes. I'm looking at it right now. He's played 8 holes. He is not the leader. He's not at the top of the board, but he's played 8 holes, and he's gone from plus 800 to plus 450 to win this tournament. Now, believe me, that plus 450, 30 minutes from now, could be plus 750. So again, a reminder, timing is everything, and it certainly is in the world of golf. Interesting to note, and this goes out to the big golf diehards out there. You might have seen this number. I had not, and it was very peculiar to me. The last 7 majors, that's major, and you're talking Masters, British Open, all that stuff. The last 7 majors have all been won by golfers in their 20s. That's never happened. We've never seen a run of 7 consecutive majors won by golfers in their 20s. But there it is. There it is. You have it. Justin Thomas, he's your defending champion. And like I said, the odds game, if you're really into this, you play it shot by shot. You play it moment by moment. That is how you find it in the PGA Championship. Okay, away from the golf world, we go away from the beautiful green grass, the beautiful conditions at Oak Hill Country Club. And let's take it to the icy conditions. Tonight, we've got the Eastern Conference Finals beginning. The Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Florida Panthers. Did you have these 2 teams in your Eastern Conference Finals? You may have had Carolina. I don't think anybody had Florida. Why would you have the Panthers when they were up against Boston in round 1, when they were taking on Toronto in round 2? Why would you have the Panthers? Well, here they are. Tonight, we'll get rolling, 8 o'clock Eastern. TNT has the coverage. Series odds for this. Carolina is a slight favorite. Minus 135. Florida is sitting at plus 115. Keys here, you've got a really good offense for the Panthers. You've got a very solid defense for Carolina. So it's that, battle royale. Good offense with Florida, very good defense for Carolina. If there were to be an X factor here, it's probably Florida goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky. This guy has been around a long time. And Sergei Bobrovsky had a ton of success with Columbus. He then signed a big contract a couple of years ago with Florida. Hasn't been that good. Hasn't really lived up to the contract. In this playoffs, he's looked really good in the last couple of series. But he runs hot and cold. He is all over the place when it comes to having success as a goalkeeper. So as a goaltender, he's kind of the guy to follow for tonight and throughout the series. The other thing going on here is you think about Florida, Carolina, Southern teams. You think about in the Western Conference, we've got Dallas against Las Vegas. Now, 30 years ago, we didn't have a team in Raleigh, North Carolina. We were just getting ready to have a team down in South Florida. We had just had Minnesota move to Dallas. We didn't have a team in Vegas. We've got 4 teams, Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals, that literally 3 decades ago didn't really exist. All Southern teams. We got this long dry spell of Canadian teams haven't won a Stanley Cup since the early 90s. It's just bonkers. None of the original 6 are in the Final 4. Head coach of the Hurricanes, Rod Brindamore, guy who played back in the 90s when it was all about the northern cities, the Canadian cities. He's now been coaching the Canes for a few years, and he talked about kind of the geographical switch in the NHL.
Says a lot about how the game's grown, number one, and we've brought it to places and fans that never would have probably thought it, 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, whatever. You wouldn't envision this happening, and you can trace it back. I said this yesterday, I think, in my opinion, was late 80s when Gretzky got traded to L.A. I think it spawned a whole new awareness in the States of hockey, and now here we are. I mean, I'm not surprising that these teams are good. The whole league is good. It's just like you said, where they've put these cities. And hockey's a great game. People love it as we know.
Always goes back to Wayne Gretzky, does it not? Don't know if I totally disagree with Rod Brindamore on that. Again, 8 o'clock tonight. Panthers, the road team, they could very quickly kind of secure home ice advantage. We'll see how game 1 goes tonight. 2 very evenly matched teams. It could be a 7-gamer between these 2 sides. That match will be on TNT as we move to our third item. that will matter tonight. Let's go to the world of the NBA, where tonight on ESPN, it'll be game 2 between the Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. It is an 8:30 start. Nuggets are favored by 5.5. Of course, the entire storyline in game 1, which the Nuggets won, was Nikola Jokic. The guy just went bonkers with a huge triple-double, over 30 points, over 20 boards, and more than 10 assists. You just don't see that very often. Darvin Ham, he is the head coach of the Lakers, and he is the man charged with trying to slow down Nikola Jokic tonight.
Said it since day one, he's not a guy that one guy is going to be able to neutralize. Like, it's going to take multiple bodies. It's going to take guys in different areas on the floor to support whoever is in front of Jokic. So, yeah, we're definitely going to mix up the matchup some and throw different pitches at him in terms of coverages and see where we land.
Didn't know they had pitches in basketball, but I guess they do. The over-unders for Jokic, by the way, tonight, 28.5 on the points, 13.5 on the rebounds, and 10.5 on the assist. The over-unders would be a triple-double. You can make a bet, a wager on Jokic pulling off a triple-double tonight. It's minus 120. For those who don't follow the betting side of things, minus 120, that means he's a favorite to do the triple-double. Now, the one that caught my eye was LeBron James is plus 900 for a triple-double tonight. Why did that catch my eye? The dude was 1 assist away from a triple-double on Tuesday night. And now you get him at plus 900? Why the heck not? Why the heck not? 8:30 tonight. ESPN, Denver hosting the LA Lakers. And we'll see if the Lakers can steal one before they head back to LA for game 3 this weekend. Let's go to our fourth item. What will matter on this Thursday? Well, we talked earlier about the big win by the New York Mets last night. Today, they will finish off their series against the Tampa Bay Rays. And the Rays will be bringing back Taj Bradley. Now, we have talked about Taj Bradley before here on the 5-Pack when he made his Major League debut back in April. Well, all he did is he won each of his first 3 starts, 3-0. He had a 3.5 ERA. How did the Rays thank him? How did they reward him? They sent him back to the minors for like a month. Today, he's back in the majors, taking on the Mets. This will be his first start since April 24th. And I think the key thing here with Bradley is this time I believe he sticks around. Because this time, the Rays have even stronger injury problems. Drew Rasmussen, pretty well out for the season. Jeffrey Springs is out for the season. They are still awaiting Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow probably going to make one more rehab start. They are hoping that maybe by this point next week, he's ready to make his season debut. But if you look at the Rays right now, you've got McClanahan pitching like a Cy Young. You got Zach Eflin doing well. Josh Fleming, who is usually a tag team guy when they go with an opener. They usually bring Fleming in like the second inning. Then he covers 4 or 5 frames. He's kind of the long relief guy. But they've had to employ him as a starter. He was out there last night starting against the Mets. And that's all they've got. So Bradley, they need him. Like even when Glasnow comes back, you still need a 5th starter. I think Bradley sticks at this point. 1:10 today will be the start at Citi Field as the Rays are taking on the Mets. Update on Tampa, they've slowed down slightly, but they are still 32-12, even with the late loss last night. Let's go to our 5th item that does matter for today. And honestly, it happened yesterday, but it matters today because, as we all know, as you get older, there are some moments where you push beyond your normal range. There are some moments where you say, I know I'm too old for this, but I got to do it. I got to push through the pain. I got to push through the worries, but I got to do this. And maybe in that moment, you accomplish the goal. But as we all know, as you get older, you may succeed in the moment, but there is usually a price to pay the next day. And I wonder today, I wonder if Rich Hill and Miguel Cabrera, both guys who are over the age of 40, I wonder if they're feeling it a bit on this Thursday morning. What am I talking about? Well, yesterday we had 43-year-old Rich Hill pitching for the Pirates. We had 40-year-old Miguel Cabrera standing in the box. And we got a 40-year dash to first base between the two codgers.
The 43-year-old and the 40-year-old Miguel Cabrera. 19 in his career against Hill. Slow roller, diving stop. Santana is Hayes. Hill going to get there. He will. Hill gets there. He beats Cabrera.
What a race, man. It was over like that. We just had the fastest 2 minutes in sports with the Kentucky Derby. That might have been the fastest 5 seconds in sports there. Rich Hill wins. I got to say, outside of watching those two over-the-hill major leaguers race to first base, did you see the graphic on Miguel Cabrera? Ugh. Now, this is his last year. He's going to the Hall of Fame, all that. Ugh. He's hitting 189, no home runs, 4 RBIs, and like a 480 OPS. Ugh. Yikes. Don't be stunned if Miggy maybe just hangs up the cleats midway through the season. Don't be stunned. Now, I wonder, you think Miggy will make the All-Star game like they did for Pujols last year? They should, right? They should. But my, those numbers, far cry. By the way, since I'm talking about old baseball players, it got me thinking about Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige pitched in a major league game for the Kansas City A's back in 1965. Kansas City was taking on Boston. Satchel Paige came out and started for the KCAs at the age of 59 years and 80 days. Rich Hill is 43. Rich Hill would need to pitch another 16 years to equal Satchel Paige. Now, in his 50s, Satchel kind of bounced around, but he still pitched. I mean, Rich Hill would be pitching in the year 2039. That ACC football deal would probably still be on the table. Satchel Paige, in that game, by the way, A's against the Red Sox, 1965. Satchel Paige, 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 strikeout, and no earned runs at the age of 59 against a real major league team. That Boston team had Carl Yastrzemski in the lineup. Satchel Paige was pitching in that game, 1965. His major league debut had been 39 years earlier. That's a lifer. And leave it to Satchel, who offered us the eternal quote after that game. This is a good one. And this is one that works in baseball, but it also works in your day-to-day. Here's the quote. Age is a question of mind over matter. And if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. I like that. I like that, Satchel Paige. Totally right. Okay, break for us. When we come back on the 5-pack, let us jump into the pack, shall we? 1989 Donruss. We know we are getting a Frank Viola. What else are we getting? We'll find out next here on the 5-pack on the Better Sports Network.
I'm sure you've heard by now, but NBA superstar Ja Morant is once again in some trouble. Well, not some trouble. It might be big trouble. There's talk of the NBA suspending him anywhere from 40 games to the entirety of the season, though no crime was committed by Ja Morant. Now, I understand influence and the way things look play a big role in the NBA, and apparently they play a big role to Ja's shoe company, Nike, as well. His latest sneaker release of the Ja Ones, which is supposed to happen on May 25th, have been pulled from Nike's app and website. And if that's the truth, and if Nike's getting ready to do away with this kid after 1 year, after a couple of mistakes, shame on you. Nike used to be a brand that was for kids like Ja Morant, who got it out the mud and came up and made a name for themselves. And now you're going to get rid of him after one mistake from a 23-year-old? Isn't Nike the same company that had Charles Barkley making commercials about not being a role model? Interesting. Nike went from being a cultural influencer to a political influencer. If you do that and take Ja Morant's sneakers away from him, I'm not saying that it's going to be massive boycotts. You probably don't care, but Nike seems to be going in the wrong direction. Curious on your comments. Put them down there in the section below. With that being said, while you're down there in the comments, check out a special offer from our friends at Fantasy Alarm.
Time now for the Daily Pack Rip on the 5-Pack with Kyle Elfrink.
The Rapture, bringing us back from the break. Kind of a good lead-in to, let's call this a pack rapturing. We usually call it a pack rip. It is time on the 5-Pack to go back in time to a time when Kyle Elfrink was not even a teenager. Oh, those were the glory days. 1989. We're going to open up a pack of 1989 Donruss. Feels like if it isn't Fleer, it's always Donruss, right? Although yesterday, I got to say, I know it's been 24 hours, but if you missed yesterday's pack rip, we had a good one with minor league baseball. It's kind of fun. My God, this thing makes a lot of noise. Cellophane. I mean, just crap. Who thought to package that stuff? Anyway, 89 Donruss. We've got our puzzle piece. I believe, let's see. Warren Spahn. So you can see the Braves jersey. For those not familiar with the puzzle piece, you'd collect these and you could put together a big Warren Spahn photo. Kind of a cool thing to search out and look for. Okay, we get rolling with our pack now. We begin with Frank Viola. Sweet music. That's what they named him. Frankie V. And man, Frankie V was flying high. He's got an interesting career. In 85, his ERA was 4.09. In 86, it was 4.51. And then all of a sudden in 87, 88, and beyond, he became like a stud. In 87, when the Twins won the World Series, 17 wins and a 2.9 ERA. In 88, 24 wins for Frank Viola. And you know, it's one of those things where when you live through it, you're like, wow, that guy, you know, he's a stud, he's a horse and all that stuff. And then in the year 2023, you start looking at those innings pitched. See that there? Look at that. Just look at that run. 258, 251, 246, 252, and 255. And you'll notice in the games, it's not like he was throwing 40 games. He probably got, about 4 or 5 more starts than the average healthy pitcher would get in 2023. He just went out there and he earned it. Man, you know, you always say, oh, it was a different era. It was, but it hurts when you lived through that era. And you got to see guys throw 250 innings. If a guy ever threw 250 innings nowadays, they'd probably fire the manager and he'd get charged with malpractice. Like he'd go to jail if he threw 250 innings. We go from Frank Viola, who, hey, man, it must have been the 80s, right? Got a mustache here and got a mustache here. Boy, Rick Cerrone, eat your heart out, Tom Selleck. I mean, look at this mustache. Rick Cerrone with the broom. He worked a lot more on his mustache than he did on his game. He was mostly a backup catcher for the Red Sox. But, man, that is thick. Thick there, Rick Cerrone. I like it. We go from Boston to New York. An 80s legend for the Yankees, Willie Randolph. Good hitter. I don't know if he did hit 305 in 87. I didn't know if he'd ever hit 300 in a season. Don't think he ever got to 20 stolen bases. But he was a guy who was a legitimate second baseman, pretty well the everyday second baseman for about 6-7 years there in New York. We go to Detroit. Dave Bregman. Nothing more than a below-average first baseman, but a left-handed hitter, so he probably stuck around for a while. We go from one second baseman over in the Bronx to a second baseman in Queens, Wally Backman. I don't know how many of you saw the 30 for 30 with the profile of the New York Mets and kind of the mid-'80s, 86 especially. And of course, they interview a lot of the participants. Wally Backman was the second baseman for that team. On his interviews on that 30 for 30, Wally Backman is the only guy of all the interviews. You know, they talked to Strawberry and Gooden and Dykstra. I guess Dykstra is sitting in kind of a palatial estate on the backside of his, I assume, his house with a pool. Wally Backman, though, is not sitting, on a porch or anything. It appears that Wally Backman is being interviewed from an RV park, where his recreational vehicle was parked, and he said, sure, come on down, ESPN. I'll do your interview, and Wally Backman's just hanging out, traveling the country. Here he is, I guess, for the New York Mets. We go next to a guy who I really don't recall back in 1989, R.C. Gonzalez of the Baltimore Orioles. If you can tell me about anything about R.C. Gonzalez, then by all means do it. Let's see his career highlights. Let's see if there's anything that would even register as a highlight. He is he is the Orioles' #1 utility infielder. That's according to Donruss. So hey, everybody's got some kind of title. #1 utility infielder. Here is a guy who always seemed. There's a few guys who've run across here on the pack breaks where you say, "Wow, I remember that guy should have been more than he ever was." Ivan Calderon of the Chicago White Sox, who was one of the original kind of grips and rips. Kind of reminded me of Pedro Guerrero. Now, Guerrero actually did it and became an All-Star. Ivan Calderon never did. Started with the Mariners, was traded to the White Sox. He did have a good year in 87, which for those who don't follow a whole lot of baseball back in the 80s, everybody had a good year in 1987. 87 was a juiced ball year. Like even Wade Boggs was hitting 25 home runs in 87. In 87, Ivan Calderon had 28 home runs in 144 games. The next year, he fell to 14. And that was in 73 games. So he was still hitting home runs, just didn't have the health that he had in 87. We've got a Donruss Diamond King coming up, Rick Russell, who every time I think of Rick Russell, I think, okay, that was a good pitcher. You know, he pitched for a good 15, 16 years, probably longer than that. But Rick Russell was a great golfer. Like Rick Russell, not that he would have been in the PGA Championship this weekend, but he was a very, very good golfer. Russell in 1985, a 2.27 ERA for Pittsburgh. And then he moved to the Giants, and he was a part of a couple of playoff teams. He was kind of the veteran leader back in those days. We go from a veteran to a guy who was just starting his career in 89, Paul O'Neill, a very good hitter for the Cincinnati Reds, won a World Series with that team. Eventually was throwing buckets and kicking baseballs back to the infield with the Yankees. Dave Steeb, the second Dave Steeb mention on today's 5-pack. We talked about Dave Steeb of the Blue Jays because I believe that he is the current record holder for consecutive scoreless innings by a Blue Jays pitcher. I think Steeb's at 33, and right now Chris Bassett's at 27. So there's Dave Steeb. Never met he's also a mustache guy. Man, I'm telling you, mustache is all that Celtics stuff. Gene Larkin was not a mustache guy unless you look at his eyebrows and you say close to a mustache. Right? That's pretty close. You know, I am not one to mock another man's eyebrows. But Steve Larkin, or Gene Larkin, not Steve Larkin. Gene Larkin, come on, man. Get a tweezer. Come on. It's got the old school donut. Check that out, the old school donut. Now, they don't have donuts necessarily on Major League Diamonds. They've got kind of the sleeve weight that goes on a bat. You know, they may still throw them out there in the batter's circle, but I don't feel like I ever see anybody swinging with the donut. As a Little League player in the 80s, the donut was critical. It was big. Here is Alvin Davis. He was a Mariners first baseman for many years. Good player. Wouldn't call him an all-star, but a pretty good player. He hit back-to-back 295 seasons. In 87, Alvin Davis, 295 in 157 games, and he hit 295 the very next year in 140 games. So he was a high average first baseman and hit his 87, again, the year of 87, the year of the juice ball. But in 87, Alvin Davis, who the Mariners were not good back in 87, really any year in the 80s, Alvin Davis hit 295, 29 home runs, and 100 ribbies for the Mariners. Very good year for Alvin Davis. Up next, a rated rookie. Donruss was very famous for the Diamond Kings and the rated rookies. This is Chris Carpenter, but not that Chris Carpenter. You'll notice this is Chris Carpenter with a C-R-I-S, not the more famous Chris Carpenter with the C-H-R-I-S. Interestingly enough, both Chris Carpenters did pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals, but not at the same time. This Chris Carpenter was a legit prospect. I remember hearing a lot of his name in the late 80s, but never really became much. more of a reliever than starter. Al Nipper making an appearance. Man, we've opened a lot of cards in the 80s and 90s, yet to find an Al Nipper. Not that we're going to put this in a holder or anything, but we did manage to find an Al Nipper. Couldn't have a baseball set in the 80s without an Al Nipper. Here's a guy who was a very good pitcher. Maybe depending on when you talk about him and who you are talking to him about. He's kind of up there with the Dave Steebs of the world. He was probably up there with the Frankie Violas of the world. We got three good pitchers here. We got David Cone. David Cone with the New York Mets came out of the gates like crazy with the Royals, and then went to the Mets. Of course, now he's still doing broadcasting, does it for ESPN. So we got three good pitchers here. None of them Hall of Famers. But if by any chance in the 80s you had these three guys, 1, 2, 3 in your rotation, you would have won World Series in the mid-80s. These guys were all good. In 88, Dave Steeb went 16-8 with an ERA of 3.04. Viola was 24-7 with an ERA of 2.64. And David Cone in 88 went 20-3 with a 2.22 ERA. Wow. Good stuff. That was his breakout season because he didn't do much in 87 with the Mets. He was okay. And then he ripped it up in 88 and eventually got a lot of money, big contract. But 20-3, man. And if Dwight Gooden had ever, straightened his head out, that could have been quite a combo, Cone and Gooden, throughout the 90s. Dan Plesac. We go from one broadcaster in David Cone to another one in Dan Plesac. Dan's still working over at MLB Network. Left-handed reliever. He is the uncle, I think, of Zach Plesac, who's currently pitching for the Cleveland Guardians. So we got some good pitching in this 1989 Donruss set. Let's go through it. We had David Cone, Dave Steeb, Frank Viola, Dan Plesac. We got a Diamond King of Rick Russell. Any other good pitching here? Let's see. Did I forget anybody? That's about it. I don't know. What do you think, folks? Rick Cerrone, best mustache in baseball? You think that's the case? Might be the case. So there you go, 1989 Donruss. No, I will say I have complained a lot about the 88 Donruss. And here's another complaint. We still have more of those to go through. But I like this 89 set. I kind of like the color scheme. They kind of messed with it and fixed things up. Of course, score. We'll get to some score baseball here probably in the next week or so. They also kind of altered the colors, which was unique. I mean, usually, with Topps, it was whether you had card 50 or card 450, you got the same look. Every Topps card was going to look the same. Not that these look different, but you do get a different color scheme from card to card. And I don't know if they kept it similar from team to team. Let me see if I can find guys from the same team here. So we got a Mets of Wally Backman. So let's pull up that David Cone. What's that look like? Okay, yeah. So even within the same team, Donruss would adjust. I kind of dig it. I like it. Some people want the more uniform, every card looking the same, but I don't dislike this on the 89 Donruss. Now, tomorrow on our pack rip, we'll get going at 12 Eastern. We will close down the week. Fleer baseball. So we'll do that tomorrow. And more packs and even some football. I think we're going to sneak some football in here as we continue. That's good for today. Enjoy your Thursday. We're back here tomorrow, 12 Eastern, with more of the 5-pack on the Better Sports Network. Up next, a best ball.